Hey guys, y'all want to come cut some pork up with me? We just got done with the festival. Darren and Billy did a pig processing thing for us. It was one of my pigs. They didn't get everything finished in the allotted time. No fault of their own. This was a bigger pig than what they thought it was going to be. That and some stuff took just a little bit longer. And of course, they're talking to people, explaining stuff, so everything goes a little bit slower. But I've got this pig. Part of it's already been cut into, quote, retail cuts. A lot of it hadn't been. A lot of this I'm going to take and just cut in, chunk it out, and use it for grind to make sausage. I eat a lot of sausage. My family eats a lot of sausage, so you can never have too much sausage. Personally, I don't like ham steaks or ham roast, and I don't have a bandsaw right now to cut shoulder steaks. I really love shoulder steaks. A bandsaw is in the works pretty soon. Hopefully we'll get one maybe this winter. But the bulk majority of this is going to go into grind to make sausage. I do have the tenderloins already out. Then we'll cut the pork chops out. Probably take at least one Boston butt. I've still got a bunch of Boston butts from some we killed this last spring. And then we'll get all the ribs, your spare ribs and your baby backs. We'll have those. I think those are actually already done. So let me grab something out of here and we'll start doing a little bit of cutting on it. All right, guys, we got one of the loins. You can see the tremendous amount of back fat that's got on there. I'm going to trim some of it off. We'll render that fat down into lard. Just a reminder, if you hadn't seen the other stuff, this pig was raised 90% on food scraps. It did have some grain. Sometimes we'll get more food scraps every day, and it just kind of varies. So sometimes there wouldn't be enough food scraps, and we had to feed them grain. So they did have a little bit of commercial feed, but 90% is food scraps. And you can grow an awesome looking animal just off food scraps. Let me grab a bigger knife and we'll start cutting this loin up into chops. All right, I got an 8-inch, this is an 8-inch Victorinox breaking knife. What I'm gonna do is kind of square that loin up just a little bit. There, look at all the fat that's on that. What we'll do is go ahead, I'm gonna put that in the grind. I'm gonna go ahead and trim a bunch of this fat off. Now we'll get in and cut some chops. There's some chops. We will put those in another pan. I use these stainless steel. These are stainless steel hotel pans. I really like them just because they get colder faster in the cooler than the plastic tubs, and I just like using them better. let me get all these jokers cut up and then we'll be back. All right, guys, this right here, this and this are all chops off one loin section. I'll show you something pretty cool. I like to keep a lot of fat on the chops just because I like to eat the fat. But this little piece right in here, if you can see it, that little, almost looks like the end of the ribeye, like on a cow. If you take that and cut it off right about here and have this little cube, you can take those things. We put them in a cast iron skillet with like some Korean barbecue sauce and treat them almost like a burnt end. They are stinking amazing if you do that with it. I'm just going to keep these and not do that. I usually do that if we're going to freeze dry the pork chops. I'll cut those tips off because there's a lot of fat in there, and fat does not freeze dry real good. So I always trim those off, and then after I've done a batch of pork chops in a freeze dryer, I've got all those little pork burnt ends that we can cook. But this is fat that we got off there. That's all the back fat. We'll render it down. I'm gonna save it, render it down for lard, and then this right here will go into grind for sausage. I'm gonna see what else I can grab out of there and do some more cutting while I got a little bit of time. All right, guys, I got all the loins cut. You can see the chops here. It fills up pretty much a hotel. That's a full-size hotel tray. Here's all the fat. You can see how thick some of that fat was on that pig. This is not going to go to waste. It's all going to be made into lard. Shelly might get a little bit of it for her soap making. But there's all your chops right now. I'm going to slide those back in the cooler, slide the fat back in the cooler, and grab something else and see what we're going to put in there. All right, this is one of the front shoulders. I'm not gonna mess with it. It's all just gonna go into grind. Like I said, I like a bunch of sausage. So what we're gonna do, my grinder will take a pretty decent amount, but we're just gonna cut this into strips to be able to run through the grinder a little bit easier. That's all we're gonna do on this is run it in strips. It'll feed through the grinder pretty easy. Some people like to cube it. I found that if you run it through in strips, it feeds a little bit better and a little bit faster. Each to their own, though. There's a bone. I'll clean that bone up a little bit better in a minute. I just want to get, for sake of time, I'm kind of in a hurry because I don't have very long this afternoon to work on this. So I'm just going to start chunking meat out and throwing in my grind pile. And if you see, that right there is a little bit of blood meat. I'm throwing it over here, and there's a couple little spots that had some dirt or something like that on them. I'm keeping all that and saving it for the dogs. Any of the blood meat the dogs will eat, they absolutely love it. Alright, I'm gonna pull everything off this bone, and really all you gotta do on doing that for deboning it is just run your knife, get in there, and just run it right along the bone. And depending on how much time you want to spend is how clean you'll get on it. Yeah, there's still some meat left on that one. The dogs will be happy that they get it. It's going to feed the dogs. We'll grab something else and be back. Here's another piece. It's got little pieces of hair here and there on it. Just take your time and pick those off. You're always gonna have a little bit of hair left on there every now and then. Usually if we got a little bit more time, we'll take and wash it off real good before we cut it up into primals. All right, we're gonna chunk this one out just like we chunked the other stuff out for grind. This will all be grind and go in. And I'm gonna do the exact same thing I did on the other. There's no need to watch all that stuff, but we'll be back in a little bit. All right, guys, we're back at it. I've got most everything pieced out. I've still got sausage to grind. I had a minute. I wanted to go ahead and start curing these pork bellies. Look at that. That is some premier, gonna be some good premier bacon right there. I've cut these bellies into sections because they just won't fit in the Ziploc bags to cure. If I had something bigger that I could close up, I'd keep them whole and do them that way, but I split them up into smaller pieces. What I'm gonna use, these are 2.5 gallon Ziploc bags. They will fit if you split them into smaller pieces. The cure I use, no nitrates, anything like that, is essentially salt and brown sugar. That's all we're gonna use for it. Equal parts salt to brown sugar. I've got it mixed up here in this top, and all I do is sprinkle this on here and rub it in good. We're gonna do that for all these jokers. Rub the fat side and rub both sides of it. Rub it good, flip it over, get a handful. Then all I'm gonna do there's one piece down. Same thing on the next one. Grab a handful, sprinkle it on, rub it in, all the little nooks, crannies, all that. And what this salt will start doing is drawing the moisture out. And what you want to do, some people cure it for less time. I cure mine for 14 days in the refrigerator. Take and flip it every day for 14 days. And then once that's done, and of course my phone would ring. When that's done after your 14 days, we'll pull it out and do a cold smoke on it. A lot of people think that there's a huge big mystery on curing bacon. There's not. Essentially, and this is all we're using, salt and brown sugar, and the bacon comes out amazingly well. All right, guys, that's it. We're gonna stick these in the cooler for 14 days and flip them every day. One of the big things is put them all either fat side up or meat side up, and then there's no confusion. All of them should be the same as you're doing that. We'll be back in a little bit to grind sausage. Hey guys, we're back. We are ready to grind sausage now. Thank goodness I'm ready to be done with this thing. It's a lot of work when you're finishing everything up by yourself, but what I've got, the spice recipe I use has got black pepper, salt, nutmeg, sage, and thyme in it. And the recipe that I use is broken down in 10-pound increments. So I got stuff set up for 10-pound increments. What I'm gonna do is grind everything, a real coarse grind, run it through the grinder, and then I'm gonna separate it out into probably 20-pound batches, mix everything up by hand, and then run it back through in a finer setting. That's the fine disc right there. The coarse disc is super big. What that does, I don't have a mixer to mix all of it, so I just mix it by hand in 10 to 20-pound batches. So I'm gonna get everything going, set up and ready to go, and we will start grinding stuff. All right, guys, I've got all my meat chunked out, stuff like that. I'm not gonna do much video because the grinder is pretty stinking loud, but I'm just gonna feed this through, get a full pan, stick it back in the cooler, let it stay cold. One thing is you want your meat as cold as you can get it. Right now, the cooler's set at 34 degrees. So it's setting at 34 degrees. The colder your meat is, the better it does with grinding because the motor and the grinder does heat up a little bit. So you just want to make sure you've got the grinder cold. I forgot I've got a freezer packet that I can put on my grinder, but I forgot to cool it down and freeze it, so I'm not going to use it. But I want to start feeding this joker in. I won't do any video of it just because it's so loud you won't be able to hear anything. All right, we'll be back when we get some more ground. All right, I've ran all my trays through. You can see the coarse grind we got on it. I don't know the exact fat content. Don't really know how to measure that, honestly, but it's got a good amount of fat content in it. You want your sausage to have a good amount of fat in it. What I'm going to do now is take my small kitchen scale, weigh out. The kitchen scale only goes to 11 pounds, so by the time you put the metal pan on there, you can get 10 pounds in there. So we'll measure out 10-pound batches, add our seasoning to it, hand mix it. I'm going to change out the dye on here to a fine dye, and then we're going to run it back through, and what that will do is mix all your seasoning up as you regrind it. So I'm not going to show you weighing it out. You should be able to know how to use a scale, but we'll do that and start mixing some stuff up.